Hi everyone, it's Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Animal Sanctuary. This week I want to revisit a topic that I've spoken about before, and that is how to reduce transition stress. Whether you're bringing an animal from a breeder directly to your home, or whether you're switching a snake that you already have from its existing habitat to a new one, there are several ways that you can go about making that change. I'm going to talk today about the least stressful way on your animal to make that transition. Predictability is really important to animal well-being. In general, animals thrive when their lives are predictable. Predictability prevents and reduces worry and anxiety. So when animals know what's about to happen, what to expect during certain circumstances, and when those expectations are met, when their reality, that world that they have always ever known, meets and matches their expectations, animals tend to remain calm and free from worry. In other words, when things are the way they think they're supposed to be, when their environment is something they're used to, they feel safe and they feel secure, and then they can go on to do other things. Now, that isn't to say that novelty isn't good. We all enjoy some novelty in our lives, but we like to come home to our familiar living circumstances. And it would be aversive to us if things like where our food was kept, where the bathroom was, where our bed was, where our resources were, changed every single day or changed very often. That would become stressful for us. So while we like to leave our home and go out and enjoy fun and exciting and different things, novel things, we also like the familiarity of coming home and having our expectations met when we walk through the door. Our snakes and other animals are no different. So the 100% easiest way and least distressing way to transition your snake from the life that they've known previously to a new life, or from the only habitat that they've ever known previously to a new one, is if you are able to replicate their old habitat in your house. So if the snake is coming from a breeder and you're able to replicate exactly how they were living before, at least for the first little bit while they're transitioning to your home, that is best. And then when you're ready to move the snake into whatever is going to be their permanent enclosure with you, if you can take their whole habitat and place it inside their new one, that is 100% going to ease their anxiety, because nothing will have changed for them. And I've done this so many times now that literally I don't notice any change in the snake's behavior when I do this, other than they start coming out of their existing habitat and exploring the new, larger, more stimulating habitat when they're feeling ready and in their own time and when they're comfortable. And so that might mean taking their quarantine tub or the tub that replicates the breeder rack and cutting a hole in the top or the side and placing it in a whole new habitat, and then just letting them be, and they will come out when they feel comfortable. Or if you've placed them in a smaller habitat when they were a baby and now you're transitioning them to a larger one, I just take the whole smaller habitat and I stick it right inside the larger one. I don't change anything. I just take the habitat along with the snake and leave everything the same. I put it in the new larger habitat and I leave the door open. And so the snake thinks, she forgot to shut the door. I wonder what's out here. And they can start coming out and exploring and using their new habitat in their own time as they feel safe and secure and comfortable doing it. So let's look at a few examples of this. Our first example is a snake named Quinlan. He's a Python Regis, and there he is sitting on top of his tub. So I made up a tub to replicate more or less what he lived in at his breeder's. It has water in it, it's got paper towels in there for substrate, and it has a hide in it, and I cut a hole in the top, and then I put a bigger hide over the hole that's on top. And he often likes to come out of that tub and sit on top of it, and then, just as you see him doing now, stick his body and head out of the hide. Does he occasionally come out and explore the larger habitat? He does. This example should look very familiar. This is Phoenix. She is from Canova, and I've done several videos about her. She typically only sits in her little breeder tub when she's going through an ecdysis cycle, and otherwise she uses her habitat at large. But this tub is fully furnished. It's got paper towels for substrate, it has a hide, it has a perch, it has water, so she can come and go as she pleases. This is an example of one of my Morelia Bredli that is in a 5x2x2 black box cages enclosure, and he went into this as a pretty small baby. He was just a few months old, and I went ahead and put him in this large habitat. But I took his whole quarantine enclosure, which is a 12x12x18 Exoterra, and I put it in the corner of this large habitat, and I just left the door open for him to come out whenever he wanted. And Morelia Bredli are very confident, very bold, very resilient. It actually only took him a few days to start coming out and using this entire space, but he still likes to perch on top of this habitat. And sometimes he'll hang out of his sky hide, and he'll partially be in the sky hide and partially perched on the edge of his Exoterra. But this is a whole bank of 6 5x2x2 cages that I have from black box enclosures. Here's another example. This is a Python Regis named Pavlova, and she started out as a little baby in an 18x18x18 cube from black box enclosures, and that's what you see here. And then when she started to outgrow that, I just took that entire cube, I took the front door off, and I put it in a 3x2x2 black box cages enclosure. And so what it does now is it creates a shelf in there for her, and it creates a cold side and a warm side. And I put a hide on top of the enclosure, so she's got an elevated sky hide. This is her humid hide, which is on the hot side, and you can see that she's in there now with her damp sphagnum moss. So this half of the enclosure stays pretty warm during the day, and then I turn the heat off at night. And then this other side where her old enclosure is going to be cooler, it's going to be darker, it's going to be more cluttered, and so she has the option to use whichever part of the enclosure that she chooses. This next example is a little bit different. This was an older snake that I got almost at 2 years old. He's another Python Regis. His name is Vanth. And I set up this enclosure identical to how his previous owner told me they had him set up. He was in a 4x2x12 inch with a hide on the hot end, a hide on the cool end, and water in the middle, and with this not exactly aspen, but some other kind of light colored substrate in the enclosure. And so I did all that, but then I also added a sky hide, which he obviously likes. I added real rocks. I added some moisture substrate on one half of the enclosure because what they were using seemed kind of dry for this species. I added a PVC perch. I added a humid hide with damp sphagnum moss, and I added that cardboard roll. And so in his case, because he was already living in a 4x2 PVC enclosure, I tried to replicate the inside of a similar enclosure here. This next example should be super familiar to you. This is Ezra. He's a Python Regis, and it seemed like he lived forever in this 12x12x18 inch Exoterra or Zoomet or whatever brand terrarium it is. And he was just so attached to it that there was no doubt this was how I was going to transition him. I put the whole 12x12x18 inch terrarium in a 4x2x2 black box cages enclosure, and I just started leaving the door open, and I didn't take out any furnishings. I left it exactly as he'd been living in it. And now we're flashing forward to present day. This is January 8th, 2023, and he is still using his little Exoterra. He loves that terrarium. And by love, I mean he prefers to spend a lot of time in there. However, it doesn't mean he spends all his time in there. And obviously, he has the option to come out whenever he wants. He has all the resources he needs in that terrarium, but he also has a myriad of resources outside of the terrarium to include a net bridge, a sky hide, a shelf, additional hides, rocks, a bigger humid hide, a log, a cave hide, a black plastic hide, a big water dish that he can get underneath. And so he has a lot of options, but I still find him the majority of the time using his little terrarium. It's just so cute, but I'm not forcing him to stay in there. And no, he doesn't stay in there all the time. So this is filmed on a different day. This was a week or two ago, and he's not in his little terrarium, which actually surprised me because usually, especially during the day, if I look for him, that's where I find him. But can you see where he is in this video? I'm going to zoom in for you in a minute, but he does use all of the space within this new habitat but he has not been stressed out by the bigger habitat because I didn't remove him from his old one. I just put his old habitat with him in the new one, and he has been free over the past many, many months, probably, I don't know, close to 8 months now, to come out of that terrarium when he wanted, when he chose, when he felt safe to do so, and start exploring the novel items and the novel space in the rest of the enclosure, which he obviously has been doing. And he's also doing very well with his target training, and he's gaining confidence. Let's say farewell to Ezra and take a look at Finrao. Our last example is another Python Regis that came from Canova, but he's not been as outgoing as Phoenix has been. And so he has been spending a lot of time in his tub. And so I took his entire tub, which is fully furnished, and initially put it in a 18 by 18 by 24 Exoterra. He lived in that for a few months until I saw that he was using all of the space outside of his tub, even though he would still go back in his tub to rest. And then I moved the same furnished tub into this 3 by 2 by 2 showcase cages enclosure. And he is coming out and he is utilizing and investigating the space at large, but he does still spend most of his time in his tub. The great thing about a setup like this is the snake can choose to spend their time where they want to. And some snakes will spend more time in their tub until they gain confidence, but other snakes abandon that tub right away and start using the whole habitat at large. It just depends on the individual. Well, this has been Serpente Sunday for Sunday, January 8th, 2023. I hope you found that information useful. There are a few other ways that you can transition snakes from their old living situations or from their current habitat to a new one. I have another video where I've gone over not only this method, but 3 other methods. But this is by far the one that goes the smoothest, that is the easiest for the individual snakes, and causes the least amount of fear, anxiety, and distress. Now, I understand that it's not always possible to do it this way. And so if it's not, I do have that other video that goes over some other options for trying to minimize transition stress with your snakes. I just want to reiterate that in general, unpredictability and surprise is aversive, and predictability keeps us and our snakes and other animals calm and feeling safe and secure. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't introduce some novelty. Novelty is stimulating. Novelty builds resilience and encourages problem solving and physical exercise and mental exercise. But any novelty that we introduce to our snakes, it should be their choice to engage with or not. It shouldn't be forced. So if you have any questions, you can comment below, or you can contact me at behavioreducationllc@gmail.com. If you want one-on-one behavioral consultations, animal training or coaching, or you want to do group live chats, consider becoming a patron. We have a lot of fun in our Patreon community. It's very educational and it's very supportive. Until next time, everybody, please remember to always be kind and love your animals.